Hello and welcome to Conversations with Disability Rights North Carolina. I'm Tori Ekstrand, an associate professor in the UNC Hussman School of Journalism and Media. I'm happy to be joined today by Christine Sullivan, Kashona Mims, and Andrea Martinez from DRNC. Christine serves as the supervising attorney for the Investigations and Monitoring Unit of DRNC. Kashona is a senior investigator with the group, and Andrea is an advocate with the unit. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed a lot about disability advocacy, and today we're going to focus on the unique issues people with disabilities are facing in North Carolina and learn a little bit more about the work that Christine and her team does during this crisis. So thank you all for joining us. And Christine, can you tell us about what is exactly the work of investigations and monitoring, and can you talk a little bit about the legal authority that DRNC has to do that work?
Sure. So disability rights, because we're a protection and advocacy system, the federal law that created us and governs us now gives us authority to go into facilities or other places where people with disabilities are receiving services. So that could be a hospital, a nursing home, a public school, a sheltered workshop, anywhere where somebody's receiving care, treatment, or services. And we have the authority to monitor to make sure that their rights are being upheld and that they're not being subject to abuse or neglect. And if we get an allegation that someone's rights have been violated or that they have been subject to abuse or neglect, we have the authority to also investigate those allegations.
And can you talk a little bit about how that work has been changing for the team since the start of the pandemic?
Absolutely. So normally we do most of our work in person. We go to the location where the person is being served. We go out to interview people, to look at the facility or the location itself. We often go to facilities on a regular basis and meet with the people there to explain their rights, to check for the safety and health violations that we're looking for, to meet with staff members as appropriate. And obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic, that's significantly impacted our ability to go out and do that work in person because it's not safe for us, but it's also not safe for the people who are in the facilities and are particularly vulnerable a lot of times because of their disabilities or their other medical needs to getting the COVID virus.
So this means a type of remote access then that you're engaged in.
Right.
And so, Kashona, can you talk a little bit about what you do, what your work is about, and then a little bit about how that work has changed during the pandemic when you're trying to, remotely monitor these institutions?
So what I do is I do conduct investigations on abuse, neglect, and exploitation. But I also monitor in the facilities, what Christine was explaining. And I had to do a lot of groundwork in kind of educating the facilities that already know we have access to the facilities in person. Now I had to go back and explain this, why virtually we should still have this access. So I did all of that work, and I have conducted several virtual visits since then, as well as attending the Human Rights Committee meetings for some of the facilities who have those committees in place, whether it's on the conference call or virtually where I can see folks with the Zoom access or Skype, or there's so many different ways, Google Meet. Whatever they have, I have actually had to do FaceTime with some PRTFs. They don't have any other setup other than a staff member's laptop via FaceTime. And I'm not being picky. I'm like, however you can do this, let's do this.
Right.
And one facility has a smart board that they were able to use. So I did get to see the students sitting as a classroom, like, students in a classroom. So that was really good. But I'm glad to have that access and let the children know in the PRTFs and in the facilities where adults are served. I am not physically present as I usually come into your facilities for your safety, but I'm still here for you to advocate for anything that you have concerns about during this pandemic. I know nobody's coming in, nobody's coming out, but I don't want you to misunderstand that because this is happening, that there's nobody here for you. So I'm like really pushing that message so children and adults will know to still call us, write us letters. I tell them they can write us letters. Any kind of way that they want to get a message to us, I try to encourage that during the virtual visits.
That's so interesting. So these PRTFs are the psychiatric residential treatment facilities. So that's
Yeah.
sort of one institution you'd be monitoring, right?
Yes.
Schools. Tell us a little bit about the different institutions you do monitor, and then
Okay, so
how is that working virtually? Like, I mean, I'm picturing somebody with a smartphone, literally like walking down the hallway. Yes.
yeah, let me describe. It's been different in different facilities. So that yes, PRTFs are psychiatric residential treatment facilities, and those are for children. Typically, once you're turning 18, you would be discharged from that facility and moved to a different level of care for adults. I also monitor in the state operated facilities. I'm monitoring in the psychiatric hospital, and I was in the neuromedical facility before as well. And those serve adults, but the psych hospitals serve children and adults. So the visits have been interesting. One staff member put the laptop on a cart and just rolled it around the facility, unit to unit. Others have set up a station and had the residents come out individually to meet with me. And another one just kind of like what you described, carrying it around the facility in hand to different day rooms and units. I have not been trying to like give them any grief about how to do it, just that we're able to do it, because it is really important that we're still having access to the people being served. Because there's still a lot of concerns in my virtual visits. I'm still getting a lot of different concerns.
Yeah. So are the residents then speaking to you directly through these virtual monitoring sessions about how things are going and the rest, or how would you describe like what the interaction is like? You said a little bit about like you got to see a classroom, but they're able to talk to you a little bit. And
yes, it is. It is a fair exchange between mutual exchange between the residents and myself. And I always explain to them that anything that they would like to discuss with me privately, they have a right to do that. This is not a forced group discussion. We can do a private call, or we could do a private virtual visit between you and I if you have other concerns that you're not comfortable with speaking about in this group setting. And so I've been able to do that too. Like, I'm never going to leave it open where a kid or an adult feels like they're stuck because they don't want to speak in front of a group of people. But the best way to do these visits, when I'm walking in the facility, I have more access to privacy and one-on-one. But it's better to try to address people in groups, just about disability rights, the work that we do. I go over the Know Your Rights brochure in a group setting. So I'm going over all of those rights. I've sent over an electronic version of that to all of my facilities. So any kids or adults that are admitted since the last time that I've visited in person, they will hand those out to them. So they'll have them before I do my virtual visit, and then we go over that, take it from there.
How frequently are you doing these? Like, are you visiting people or institutions daily, weekly? Like, or is that on a set schedule of some sort? Because there'll be people who are listening, watching here who don't have a sense of that. And I'm not sure I even have a full sense of.
Yeah. So the unique access that we have does not require us to do a standing schedule. Mm-hmm. So I always practice to not do a standing schedule. They usually do not know when I'm going to conduct a visit. I will now have to give more of a little notice because of the virtual setup and the technology piece of it. But I'm still doing it the way before I would, once we give our initial access letter to the facility, we have entered the facility, and now we can, come in within the visiting hours at any day or time. But with this, I'm giving them a little notice to let them know tomorrow I'll be doing a Zoom, meeting, virtual visit. So it's been, I haven't had any, I had a little pushback, but I was still able to get the visit done. Some people in leadership in facilities would like to say it's disruptive or it's going to cause some sort of issues within the facility, different things to try to keep us out. That doesn't work for us. We're a pretty strong team about making sure we get into the facilities. Christine is our access guru, and she's already on speed dial for whenever we need her to contact their attorneys and let them know we have the right to be in facilities. So what I've been doing is I've been trying to visit either some facilities I visit twice a month, and others I've been keeping a monthly, because it is a lot of facilities throughout North Carolina that we have to visit. So I haven't done any.
How many are we talking about overall that you're working on, or the team's working on?
I have 7. Another teammate has 6.
Okay.
Christine had 1.
Mm-hmm.
And we've
and
also
Debbie had 1. So that's a lot. It's a lot. It's probably. Are you speaking about PRTFs or all the facilities?
Well, I guess all of it, right? Because it's not just the PRTFs. Like,
no, it's not.
A sense of the scope. How many? I mean, this is a
geez.
lot of work.
It is. Yeah. I actually haven't even counted. Christina,
yeah,
have you counted?
I haven't either. And to be honest, Tori, because COVID has presented such a unique situation, we've continued our monitoring in our regular facilities that we visit routinely, typically on a monthly or twice a month basis, but we've also added different facilities. So as we're learning about new outbreaks in facilities, or if there are facilities that have come to our attention for other reasons, good or bad, we've been reaching out to those folks by telephone, by video chat. So I'm honestly not sure how many we've even spoken with at this point, or done monitoring visits in, because it's just been such a constant flow. I haven't had time to sit down and count yet.
Yeah, this is ongoing. Kishona, can you tell me a little bit about what residents or residents of these facilities, citizens of North Carolina with disabilities in these places, how have their concerns changed since the pandemic began, or have they changed? What are those? I'm curious what some of the stories that you're hearing or concerns that they have.
Well, most of the concerns are the same. Staff interaction, rights violations, some abuse and neglect allegations. But what has changed is a lot of I will speak to the geriatric population that I serve. They really do not understand the piece of, and the children. They have the same concerns in reference to meeting with their loved ones in person, going out on the visits with their families. That part they have not been able to understand, and they want the facilities to come up with a safe way for their families to come in to visit them. They don't understand, well, if the staff have found a safe way to be here, why can't you figure this out for my loved one to come in? They're missing their families. That's one of the biggest things that has constantly come up during my virtual visits.
Right. So Andrea, your role focuses often on advocacy and investigation within education systems, and some with the PRTFs. Can you talk a little bit about your work, and then a little bit about how that has changed since the pandemic began?
Yes, so in my regular work, I would visit schools, primarily schools that have a majority population of students with disabilities, and were schools that were, I guess, created for the express need of serving students with particular different types of disabilities. So I would be physically present in those school buildings and able to make recommendations. I'm so proud of the work we've been able to do over the past 2 years, because we have gotten more schools to be compliant and think about different ways of school discipline and behavior support for students. And so when I'm on the ground and able to see that kind of stuff, I can make those specific recommendations. Now that everyone is out, my role has changed a lot. I still have my ongoing investigations and lots of documents to go over, but primarily what I've been concerned about in the interim is making sure that when students and teachers do come back into the classroom, that they can do so in a safe way, of course, with reference to the pandemic now, but also you may not know that a particular part of my role is focusing on reducing seclusion and restraint. So what are the ways that we can still make this a priority going forward? Because it's even more present of a concern now. You cannot socially distance when engaged in restraint. That's just not possible. So I've been focusing on trainings for staff, as well as offering trainings to different school resource officer precincts throughout the state and making that a part of my training for the summer. We have some scheduled on the books right now, which I'm really excited about. It's been successful in the past because I'm able to get the perspective of how police officers are seen by other staff. It's actually pretty incredible, where even staff themselves are confused, like, oh, a school resource officer is supposed to be a part of the discipline, when that's not true at all. Their role is specific to school safety. So you cannot use the police officer as a threat. And sometimes I would definitely imagine that officers believe that themselves, that they are a part of school discipline, when this is not the case. So it's really been a part of my effort before anyone steps back on campus to make sure that there are preventative things that we can do to keep those children safe, especially regarding seclusion and restraint.
Yeah. And so since now the pandemic has happened, where has your focus still been mostly on that? Like, you're getting ready, you're saying, for these folks to come back to school. Is that a lot of what's going on right now in the work that you do? Or is, one of the things I heard a lot about in the spring was, and I'm not sure if you're working on this specifically, but about just dealing with helping families whose loved ones have IEPs, right, and various needs that they have in the home. So I'm just curious whether that's also becomes part of what you do, or whether it's mostly focused on what you've been talking about here.
Well, we do have a component, especially in speaking with schools and advocating to them prior to, is having that focus on trauma-informed care and making that not just a phrase that people use to say that they are educating children in a trauma-informed way, but what does that actually mean in practice? So it's been something that we've been cognizant of for quite a while, even before my position at Disability Rights North Carolina was created. And as I was telling you before, mostly I've been fairly impressed with the teachers, especially at the residential schools, making that an intentional part of their outreach to students now. Because of course there are the academic subjects that and instruction time they need to get in, but realizing that these are not normal times and that this current pandemic and crisis disproportionately affects our people, our population. So how can they address that? And they've done that by reaching out to students specifically, but not only the students, to the parents, to see, hey, what dynamics are at play right now in your family, and in what way can we support your family in making sure you guys are mentally and emotionally supportive. And that's looked like a lot of different things. That's looked like open hours for students to speak with each other and speak to staff. That's looked like teachers coming out to homes, not in homes, but dropping off materials, things of that nature. So that has been something positive to see. And I'll bring up what I brought up earlier as well, as though we've been afforded the opportunity with technology to be in contact with people in different ways and forced to think about education in different ways. I will say that for students who are blind, deaf, or hard of hearing, in some ways that has been socially isolating, especially for deaf and hard of hearing students, because being around their peers affords them the opportunity to be social often in more ways than they're able to at home, because we know that many families unfortunately are not fluent in ASL. So there's been pros and cons in integrating this technology. I can never say that technology can totally take the place of socialization for people in general, and especially our children, but we're working on it moving forward. And with my position specifically, since I'm not able to be there as well, it's been thinking about, well, what are you going to do when these students come back on campus? Like, how are you addressing the specific safety needs relevant to the pandemic and coming back, and what is the plan so far, because many teachers and directors have been reliant on, well, we'll use the summer to deal with related services for these students. Well, what if that's not a possibility? What are you going to do then? So that's been a part of our ongoing conversations. And I'm, along with the team, partnering with the team for also monitoring more facilities that would not have been a part of my work prior to. So that's been interesting with different demographics. You know, I've worked with children mostly in my career, but being able to monitor and hopefully prevent some places that have had issues with infection control in the past, be able to prevent some more outbreaks from happening in the future. So we're doing our best. I know everyone is working so hard. I'm just really proud and happy to be a part of this team that's doing this work.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's so important. And I think one of the tricky things is that the ground keeps shifting on us. Like, we can't be sure at any one point, like, right. And particularly with, folks in these facilities, how is it that we're going to address whatever, the needs are now versus 3 weeks from now, because we don't have a sense of like what will happen with the virus in 3 weeks. I mean, maybe things will improve, but maybe they won't. And so you put plans in place, or you put various, advocacy efforts in place, I imagine. And then, right, the calculus changes on you again, I would imagine. Yes, Andrea, yeah. I mean, have you seen that happening where you've had to just sort of pivot because, okay, it worked this week, but it's not going to work in 3 weeks, right?
Yes, I've even been thinking about, I have made contacts with various precincts about setting up trainings for school resource officers, and thinking that maybe now is a way to think about how we serve this particular need differently. Is it even going to involve, based on school decisions, school resource officers in their place, or are they going to serve that need in a different way? So I'm going to try to be flexible in the way I get this information out, but make sure that the ultimate goal of children being protected, whatever avenue that takes, can be possible in the school spaces. And I think it speaks to what Kashona was saying a lot earlier, that she's had to be flexible in the way that she contacts these places. We're not writing people hard about the way and how to get into contact with us, but we're just keeping that greater goal in mind when we may do this outreach and do these monitoring visits.
Right. Christine, can you tell us a little bit about like what it is that folks in North Carolina can do, residents in North Carolina can do to support your team? What is it that these institutions themselves can be doing to better support, in some cases, the efforts that Kashona and Andrea are doing? Like, what is it that you hope for and look for as this work evolves, especially during a pandemic?
So one thing we always look for, of course, is, like you said, how the facility receives and supports our work. Sometimes it's a matter of us educating a location about who we are and what we do, and usually that's enough to smooth the way. Sometimes it takes a little bit more effort than that. So one thing I think that's been very positive during this pandemic, that we've been reaching out to places we haven't really had a relationship with before, and for the most part it's gone very smoothly. So certainly I would encourage the facilities to continue to welcome our questions and welcome our information, because it's going to come whether you welcome it or not, and it's just easier for everybody that way. And as far as residents, we don't know, we can't be everywhere at once, obviously. So we don't know what's going on if people don't reach out to us. So if people have questions about their rights, if you think your rights have been violated, if you think maybe there's something going on at a loved one's facility that we could assist with, just reaching out to disability rights, the information will get to us, and then we'll follow up in whatever way we feel can be most effective, whether that's us making some phone calls to the facility or doing a virtual monitoring visit, or maybe it goes on our list for a future in-person visit when that's safe to do, and that's certainly something we're looking forward to. So just reaching out to us and letting us know what's going on, or if you feel like you're having a good experience, we like to hear about those too. A lot of times people only call, of course, if something is going poorly, but we do like to hear good stories as well. So if there's something that you feel like is going well that we can recommend to other folks, we like to hear about that as well.
Right. Well, thank you, all of you, for the tremendous work that you do, and especially the work that you're doing in this moment. It's always been important, this work, but you know, you have all admirably done amazing work, you know, given the fact that you are physically unable to be in these places, but still advocate for the residents and citizens of North Carolina. So thank you for that. And thanks for talking to me today.
Thank you.